What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 172. On this Monday, May 5th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you on this first Monday of May. We've done a lot of talk about the problems with this Oklahoma roster. We'll do some positive vibes today. What do we feel the best about? We'll break it down a little bit. On a Monday, some of the more notable portal absentees, departures have, picked their new teams. We'll kind of react to that a little bit. Men's hoop stays hot in the portal. And of course, we'll recap the weekends that were for the Diamond Sports as well. May, home stretch of the year, postseason underway this week for softball, baseball getting close as well. So a lot to talk about there with the Diamond Sports. James and I will do that on the back end of the show. But guys, let's start on the football side. Like I mentioned, we've the portal has closed. There's still a possibility of another edition. If you're a VIP subscriber, you know what I'm referring to. It sounds like maybe another quarterback being added as a depth piece could be down the road here in the very near future. We'll probably talk about that more later in the week with Colin. But for the most part, this portal cycle in the books. Obviously, we know who is left. The roster is mostly what it's going to be when we get to fall camp. We're going to do, position stash reports and all that when we get to fall camp. But I just kind of figured, Tom did his latest depth chart projection for the upcoming season. It kind of got me thinking. We've talked a lot about the tight end room kind of being whatever it is. We talked about the wide receiver room. Can they keep it healthy? Cornerback room, is it deep enough? Let's be positive. First Monday of May, positive vibes. What do we feel the best about with this Oklahoma roster? When you look at this thing, Tom, you did the depth chart. You peruse it. The defense has got some strong spots. Offensively, it has improved in a couple of notable areas from a year ago. What's the deepest and strongest position on this Oklahoma roster as we get ready to get into the summer and the full-blown offseason in your guys' estimation?
Yeah, I think there's a few candidates, but I think the obvious answer here is defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
You returned 4 of your top 5 guys from that room. Dejon Terry, the only one out of eligibility and no longer there. But, obviously David Stone had a brief dalliance in the portal and then came back. So they return him. They return a freshman All-American in Jaden Jackson, who, missed the spring after having a shoulder cleanup. But you have 2 former blue chippers there. You have Dominic Williams, who's, started all but 1 games in 3 years of college ball, has played in the college football playoffs, obviously was a kind of a foundational piece for them up front there last year. And then Grayson Halton, who really kind of broke through last year. And that core 4 right there, I think, is easily the strongest, 2 deep part of the roster.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the group I wanted to go with, but I'll do a little something different just for the sake of the conversation. I think I like the running backs room as well. I mean, just with the portal addition of getting Ott, coming in, adding him to a guy like, Javonte Barnes, Xavier Robinson, Taylor Tatum. It's a very talented running back room. And I think we touched on a little bit last time, but this room has a lot of different skill sets amongst the guys. And so each guy has their own, best thing that they can do. And you could throw them in a given situation where I think each of the guys are going to get some playing time this season. So it's a really good situation for the running back room as well. So I want to just throw them out there, man. It looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, and I agree with both you guys. I mean, Tom, it's hard to argue against defensive tackle when you're bringing back what you are, like Tom, kind of articulated. You're only losing to Dejon Terry, bringing everything else back. I agree with James. Running back room, kind of a sneaky, I think, is in the conversation for this with the addition of Jaden Ott. Obviously one of the most coveted running backs in the portal, winter or spring, just to keep it going and keep bouncing around. I kind of went back and forth a little bit. It's kind of crazy considering that you lost guys as good as Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, but linebacker and safety both. I would lean safety also up there. I love Robert Spears-Jennings. I think Peyton Bowen is a guy that, he hasn't quite tapped into that 5-star potential totally. He's had moments that flash. He's played pretty well. He hasn't always been 100% healthy. Hopefully he can be fully himself because there's a reason he's a 5-star. You mix him in with Robert Spears-Jennings with these young guys who I think we're all really pumped up about with, Boganowski and Powers and Hardy. Mm-hmm. That room is really in a good place, even though you just lost a guy as good as Billy Bowman, who obviously we talked about last week, just got taken in the 4th round of the NFL draft. I love that safety room. Brandon Hull does such a good job. That's a position that year after year we continue to do this, and when we do our position staff support, we get to safeties, and it's like in great shape again. I think the safety room is right in that mix as well. Really, the whole defense you feel pretty good about, but safety would be high up there for me. And linebacker too, even though it's a little thin, the top end of the linebacker room is as good as any position on the team, especially with the addition of Kendall Daniels in there in this last portal cycle. So, defensive tackle, I think, is probably the correct answer. I think we're all in agreement there, but there's a few other that are right up there as well.
Yeah, I would agree on linebacker. And just like the linebacker as a whole, but specifically, I think, and I know this is weird because it's just one player on the field at a time in that role, but the cheetah spot, I think, is incredibly strong, especially if Kendall Dolby is back 100% between, just the variety of options and kind of diverse skill sets you have there. Because like Kendall Dolby obviously made that position his own last year before he got hurt in that Tennessee game. And he kind of gives you that, prototypical slot corner skill set and body. Whereas then you have Kendall Daniels, who is, built a little bit more like an Isaiah Simmons and is, more of that traditional linebacker safety hybrid. And then Reggie Powers got a lot of work there this spring too, and he's kind of more of the prototypical safety that you can just slide down into the slot. So I think just having kind of that diversity of skill sets and body types at position makes that role particularly strong and deep going into this season.
Mm-hmm. And I can't wait to see, more of Kendall Daniels at the cheetah position as well, because I know Kendall Dolby may be coming a little slow in there. But Kendall Daniels, just when I saw him in high school when he was a safety, he had such good ball skills already, but he was also a really, really hard hitter as well. So, like, he would come down and really put the smack on some guys in high school. And so now that he's grown his body to the way he has, for him to be where he's at, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how he performs. And it seems like in a role that was invented for him just because of the way he, came up playing football and where he's at now. So, that's, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, just that cheetah rotation in general, I think, is really interesting because, there are ways to get two out of three of those guys on the field at the same time. Because, we saw Kendall Dolby get some work at corner this spring. We'll see kind of if they test him out there a little bit more. Obviously, he's got some experience there, but was really comfortable at the cheetah spot. But if you want to, put Kendall Daniels there and have them both on the field because, you want to get your 11 best on the field for certain packages, I think there's scenarios where that works out. And then there's also scenarios where you could have Kendall Dolby or Reggie Powers in the cheetah spot and then Kendall Daniels shifting inside with that linebacker core just because he has the versatility to kind of do both. So I'm just really intrigued by the personnel there and the different looks that they can provide.
No doubt. It's almost like in basketball when you can go like a small ball lineup or, big. It's kind of what they have the ability to do, the different guys at that cheetah spot. I agree completely. Kendall Daniels, when you, a lot of people like to do after spring, like stock up, stock down, stock up on Kendall Daniels. He was one that I think everyone is pretty fired up about, down there in Norman. And, when you hear Wes Goodwin talk about guys like Isaiah Simmons, I mean, that gets you fired up, for what they think that Kendall Daniels could be. And he certainly looks the part. He's a behemoth. He's a monstrous human who can play safety and linebacker. That's what you want. That's cheetah right there. That's exactly what, that position is kind of earmarked for. So definitely fired up for him. If you consider cheetah its own position, it might be in the conversation for this also. Position group. But, there's some good things to feel about certainly on this roster. We do a lot of focusing on the negative and further. So that's more where the conversation lies during spring. What are the concerns? Where they need to add in the portal, all that. Colin and I had a whole deep dive last Thursday about, should they have added a corner? There's quite a few number of positions on this team that I think you feel really, really good about too. So starting the May off with a little bit of good vibes there. As far as that goes. And again, we'll do our position stash report series. That's all sneaky soon. I know it's still a little ways off, but it'll be before you know it. Fall camp and media days are just a little over 2 months away. So we'll check back in then, but a lot of summer and spring here to kind of come through. And like I said, maybe still one more portal edition kind of hanging out there. We'll keep an eye on that. Check out Oklahoma.247sports.com. You'll know when I'm all talking about the name and all that. Colin's been all over all the portal stuff. It may not be quite done. We'll talk about that a little more with him likely later in the week. As far as some other stuff, just some housekeeping here, some cleanup. We did get a couple of transfer portal announcements. I don't really talk much about the guys who leave as far as where they go. It's not really, I don't think, of much intrigue. But when it's two guys like this, I thought it was worth at least bringing up on the show. Gavin Sawchuk announced he's going to Florida State over the weekend. Davon Mitchell did the same. He's going to Louisville. So both these guys are staying in the Power 5. We talked about that with Gavin last week. Felt pretty confident a Power 5 team would scoop him up, and they did. Same for Davon Mitchell. We did this same thing. We talked about him. Just felt like the upside is just way too high that someone in Power 5 was going to give him a shot. he gets one at Louisville. Any grand takeaways here from these two guys, where they landed in the ACC? Feels like pretty good spots for both, really, in my kind of estimation.
Yeah, I mean, with Gavin Sawchuk in particular, it's almost a little poetic that he lands at Florida State, since that was kind of his big breakthrough game as a true freshman.
Well, we hadn't seen him like at all until then, really.
Yeah, he had 2 carries before that bowl game in the Cheez-It Bowl, and then 15 carries for like 105 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
kind of announced himself. And I think he'll do really well with them. Gus Malzahn, offense coordinator, he's been able to produce some really good backs over the years, whether it was at Auburn, obviously at UCF, they had RJ Harvey the last couple of years. So I'm curious to see kind of just how he does there, because when he's been healthy, he's been very effective. Obviously, that back half of that 2023 season was really, his bread and butter, 5 straight 100-yard performances to finish off the year, average like 125 yards per game and like 6.5 yards per carry during that stretch. Showed he can be an effective back when healthy, just, was kind of hampered by injuries a lot over his career. So we'll see how this fresh start goes for him, but I like the landing spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like it, especially Gavin Sawchuk. I mean, Florida State seems like a place he could really, really shine at. And like a guy with his speed, it seems like that was what Florida State was built on for those years that they were really, really dominant. They were just fast guys, out there in Florida. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. And so getting a guy like him, I think he will resonate with what they like to see out there. So I think that's more about him that I really like about it. Davon Mitchell, it seems like it's a better fit. Academically, maybe there's some easier aspects about it. Maybe less pressure at Louisville than it is at Oklahoma. I don't know entirely sure about it, but it seems that's the sentiment I get from it. So that's the way I see it for him. I mean, it's good that they both landed on their feet in a good spot, good homes, and I think they can shine from here on out. So that's good for them.
Yeah, rooting for Davon. We talked about that whenever he, left. It just didn't work out at Oklahoma. The staff gave him lots of chances, and he just couldn't quite get it on track. But we knew the guy is at one point a 5-star. So when he committed, it was a 4-star because he was classified. That the talent is off the charts. He'll get another shot somewhere. Hopefully he can make the most of it. And he's getting that at Louisville. It's a Power 5 program. It's a program that, has had some pretty good years, recently. They just put their quarterback in the NFL. We'll see what they have coming up this coming season. But, rooting for him. And then Gavin, I just like the thought of, Mike Norvell. Just that Cheez-It Bowl has just been like stuck in his brain for 3 years. And he is like, oh, I know that name. Like kind of funny to think about, basically, that after – you fast forward 3 seasons later, and he's going to be playing for Florida State after, like Tom said, that was when he kind of announced his presence to the world a little bit. And good for Gavin, though, to end up at not just another Power 5 program, but another, powerhouse. When it's all working, Florida State is a top end college football program. So obviously had a horrendous year last year, but imagine it'll get back on track before too long. So rooting for both guys, though, and their new landing spots for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's not just like Mike Norvell isn't the only one that's seen him up close. Gus Malzahn was at UCF when Gavin had that 100-yard game against them in 2023 too. So they've both been on that receiving end of a big-time Gavin Sawchuk performance and seen what he's capable of, when he's been able to be a featured back and been able to stay healthy and get on the field. So, again, I like the fit for him. I think he'll do well there, and hope to see both of them succeed.
No doubt about it. No other return trip. I know we have a bunch of return trips with Jackson Arnold this year and Bauer Sharp, Nick Anderson. These guys – they were in the post spring, so they couldn't go SEC, but they go elsewhere. They leave the conference, and if we're going to see them, have to be in a bowl game situation this coming season. Shifting over to hoops, they've been piping hot in the portal. We've talked about that the last couple of Mondays because they keep getting new guys, always on Monday. Wish they would do this a little closer or earlier in the day as we get on the show. They keep doing it right after. They got Derrion Reid. We talked about Derrion a little bit last Monday, just kind of briefly in passing. This is a guy who's a former 5-star, another high-end portal get for Oklahoma, top 40 guy in the portal overall. 6'8", just played 1 year at Bama, so he's got a whole career in front of him. Potentially, obviously, he can jump to the NBA or something if he has a good year. But played last year on a good Alabama team, averaged about 14 minutes a game. Tom, I mean, you've obviously been all over this and what it means, but this portal class is nuts how good it is. And this one is right up there with any of them. I mean, again, a guy who's a former 5-star McDonald's All-American, heck of a get here. And this portal class is just unbelievable. I mean, anything you could have possibly hoped for after the way last season ended, getting to the tournament finally. I mean, A+. I don't know what more you could hope for if you're an OU fan with what they've done in the portal, the latest here being Derrion Reid.
Yeah, ninth ranked portal class, 4 4-star guys, 3 of them in the top 50. And I think Tay Davis had checked in, 66 or so, which is funny because when they signed him, he was like a top, 30, top 40 guy. And then more guys enter, things get reevaluated. But, it's a really strong portal class. I think by just like strength of each player rating, I think it's like top 5 or top 6 nationally, but then overall it's like top 10. But I really like the Derrion Reid one. His numbers aren't as impressive as some of these other guys that they signed, but I think he's the most high upside.
Yeah, exactly.
Class, just because you look at him, former McDonald's All-American, former 5-star, played in the SEC, was on a team that went to the Elite Eight last year. He was hampered by a hamstring injury that cost him really like the back half of February, and then didn't play a whole lot in the postseason when he did return. They tried to limit him and not risk too much, but he was just in and out of the lineup a lot throughout the year, so couldn't really get his footing. Averaged 6 points, 3 rebounds per game. Just really athletic guy, slasher type, plays above the rim. In high school, shot the 3 effectively, didn't do so as much at Alabama, but he has that, potential for growth there in his game. Just a really good all-around skill set. And, like you said, he's a guy, he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. I wouldn't expect him to use all 3 just because the type of talent he is. But if he can, stay healthy and, grow into that, 5-star potential and capability he had, I think he's a really good fit. Probably going to end up as a starting 3. I know last week you asked me, the lineup prediction. I feel like I have a little bit of a better idea right now, but I think he'll probably be your starting 3 with Tay Davis at the 4, Moagi at the 5, and then you have obviously Nigel Pack and Xavier Brown in the backcourt with Dayton Forsyth, Jadon Jones, and Jeff Nwanko kind of rounding out that core rotation there. So really impressive portal haul. They, Porter Moser talked about it after they lost to UConn. Like, you need to win in April and May.
They have
to be competitive in March, and they have won. They've been stacking these wins. Like, they're not going to have a $10 million roster like some of these teams, but they are being very competitive right now. And that's what Porter Moser asked for, and that's what he's getting right now. So curious to see how it shapes out, but they should be in good shape heading into their second SEC season, because this roster, top to bottom, looks more like a SEC roster than what they went into last season with, even though they had some really good parts last year.
I think he's such a good guy to get right now because of, like you said, where the roster's at. And Josh, like you said, he's a high rise guy. I mean, he could be a guy that really performs really well here down the stretch. So you get him when his stock is a little bit lower than maybe it can be. And if he surges here, it's the perfect get, and it'd be a perfect get for him. So he averaged 14 minutes last season, as you said, Tom, with the hamstring injury kind of taking some minutes away from him. Get him healthy and put him in this unique rotation that's going to be really good. I think it could serve really well for Oklahoma, just getting a guy like this. So I really like the pickup, especially at this time, and when we already have a really solid group going around him. It could be really good, and so I like it. I really like it.
Yeah, and I talked about his offensive game, but defensively, he's really versatile. He can guard 1 through 4 for them. One of his kind of performances that he hung his hat on last year was in the non-conference slate against Houston, where he was matched up with LJ Cryer, and I think Cryer still had like 30 points, but he did it on like 6 of 25 shooting. He just like gave him fits, so he can step out and provide length on a smaller guard, but also still kind of defensively just has the athleticism to guard bigger guys at the 4. Not so much like a post presence, but like if you have like a stretch 4 or something like that, I think he provides a lot of positional versatility there defensively to just kind of switch around and kind of open things up.
Yeah, Tom said before, I think upside is the biggest thing here. I mean, he was the number 17 overall recruit the previous year. Obviously, just played 1 year at Alabama. mean, go peruse some of the names around him. A lot of them are going to be lottery picks this coming year. Jeremiah Fears was 65 in those same rankings. Now, obviously, Jeremiah Fears are classified up because any circumstances there, but it gives you an idea. I mean, of what he was thought of out of high school. I mean, this is a guy who, again, 5-star. They don't just give those away. He's got a very, very talented guy and kid. Really, I mean, played 1 year. He's still extremely young. So you add him to the mix, and again, a lot of years of eligibility to work with. Obviously, I'm sure he wants to have a big year and go to the NBA, a la Jeremiah Fears. But it's not like it's a one. I mean, if he wants to come back, he can, right? I mean, you have some room to kind of work with there, which is nice. And this roster's in good shape. You still have a few spots to kind of play around with, probably just kind of fill it out, more depth pieces you would imagine from here. You have a pretty, like Tom kind of said before, like you have kind of your 8 or 9 guys, it feels like. So still got a few spots to kind of fill out, but quite a portal class. And, it's really impressive and cool to see OU investing in hoops the way they have this offseason. Porter Moser was banging that drum over and over and over that the resources weren't where they needed to be. They're giving it to him, and Trae Young's come in and done his thing. I will say this, not to be negative or doom and gloom or something. They really need to have a good season. For them to put this much resources into this year, this is one of those spots where if you have a rough year, or God forbid you miss the tournament, this is where people can do the look what happened. We put resources into it and it didn't happen, and then that right or wrong, they'll go right back to potentially it's not worth it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So you want to capitalize on this and deliver a strong season. I would say comfortably make the tournament. Let's not be sweating it out on Selection Sunday this time. You want to be in there and probably win a tournament game at least. Something like that is probably what needs to be the expectation this coming season. Just got a long way to go. It's got to fill out the roster. It's only May, but that kind of feels like where we're at right now. It's another important year for Porter and the program, just to build on it, just to keep the momentum a little bit. But a great portal class so far to this point, for sure. I think that's it for this portion. We'll let Tom jump out. James and I will recap some Diamond Sports, get into the meaty part of the year for those two teams to get into the postseason. Tom, appreciate you as always. We have all the football hoop stuff, and we'll talk to you next week, man. All right, we now shifting to the Diamond Sports portion of the program. James covers softball. I cover baseball. Beautiful time of year. We shift the calendar to May. We're into the postseason now for softball this week with the SEC tournament. Baseball still got a couple weekends left, and then they get their tournament. But softball regionals next week. I've always said this stretch is extremely underrated on the sports calendar from now until the College World Series in Omaha in mid to late June. It's just awesome. The two postseasons are a lot of fun to watch and to cover. And, obviously OU softball always goes deep. Baseball's had a great run last few years. So it's just kind of a fun year. And really get started this week with the SEC tournament in softball, which we'll preview a little bit. Before we do that, though, let's start with looking back at the final series of the year, James, in Florida. Weird weekend for OU because they lost the series but won the SEC. So kind of a happy and a sad at the same time. Obviously, I'm sure Patty Gasso is much more upset about the series loss than she is happy about winning the conference, but still a huge accomplishment to win the SEC in the first year. Everyone talked about everything they had to replace from last year, and the SEC is so good and it's so deep, and OU still finds a way to go in first year and win the toughest conference, in the sport. But they did lose the series this weekend after winning the opener. They lose on Friday and Saturday. The takeaways for you from these games, it's been kind of a weird up and down year because there's been time. I mean, they just swept Texas the weekend before. We're talking about they're playing their best softball at the right time. Don't want to make too much of a series loss to a good team on the road, but it's a little bit of a wake-up call like, this team is still beatable at the end of the day. Well, where are you kind of at with this team after the Florida series, and what were maybe your takeaways?
So going into this series, there were some scenarios that I think everybody was paying attention to, especially for Oklahoma. So they had to win at least 2 games in the series, and they would win the SEC title without worrying about anybody else. It was their own destiny if they won 2 games. If they won 1 game, which is what they did, they won that first game. If Texas A&M and Tennessee split their series, no matter what, OU was going to be the champion. So shout out to Sophia Nugent, former OU Sooner for Tennessee, who won game 2 for Tennessee with 2 home runs on her end. And OU had the title already wrapped up. And so I think that kind of plays a part into how they approach game 2 and 3. Patty Gasso didn't want to approach it this way. This is kind of what she said on ESPN. She kind of felt like the team was a little sluggish, and not playing at their best at that time. But maybe I think that's maybe what it was. They had the SEC title in wraps. Maybe they're working on a few things here. Maybe they're not as motivated. I don't know. But that's what it looked like. And Florida was all the way there. They were ready to win that series. I mean, they were pulling out all the stops. They were playing their best game, and it just looked really good. And I mean, I asked around. This is not normal to lose 3 SEC series in a season and still win the title. It just shows you how deep this conference is. And you look at the bracket for the SEC tournament, things like that. All of these teams pretty much are in the top 25 in the nation. Like there's so many SEC teams. Like it's that situation where anybody can be beat. Like you look at how they split their series this season. Texas beat Florida, OU beat Texas, and then Florida beat OU. And there's these different situations where you don't really know what's going to happen. And then like you have a team like Arkansas, who has just been on fire at the end of the season. Like they've won, I think, the last 6 SEC series. So it's like it's crazy how they're playing right now, and they're number 5 in the conference. So it's just like you don't really know what's going to happen. That's what makes this SEC tournament so exciting, because it can be anybody. It could be anybody's day.
Sure.
It can be anybody's day. And so I think that's where Oklahoma's at after this Florida. They're going to this SEC tournament after this Florida loss. It's a little weird. Usually OU's rolling, but now they're going on a little 2-game losing streak. But I think you can feel comfortable knowing that they're going to be as motivated as they can be to pull this off, because I know it's going to be a historical moment for them and they want to get there. So it's pretty fun to see overall.
Yeah. Florida's really good. You imagine they would be up for that. I mean, OU coming anyway, but the fact they're number 1, obviously 4 straight national title. I mean, that you're going to get everyone's best shot. I mean, I'm sure the team fans realize that's stating the obvious. Yeah. Moving into this week, SEC tournament, it's in Athens, Georgia's hosting it. That's how the SEC tournament works in softball. It moves around. Different schools host it. Whereas, baseball, it's in Hoover every year. It's a little different in softball. It moves around.
Yeah.
So they got the double bye, the number 1 seed in the tournament because they won the conference. They're going to get either Mississippi State or LSU. Those teams are going to play on Wednesday morning. And then OU is going to play the winner of that on Thursday morning. It's a 10 a.m. start here. It's 11 a.m. out there in Athens. Obviously, James, at the end of the day, you really just want to be in the top 8. I mean, that's what really matters. That's what gets you home in the regional and home in the super regional, and then also you don't ever have to leave your ballpark to get to Oklahoma City in the College World Series.
Yeah.
Kind of, I guess, a little bit of, in your estimation, getting the number 1 seed, is that something they want to get? Is it important to get? Their chances of doing it? Do they need to win the tournament this week, you think? I mean, just kind of look ahead to this week and then the selection Monday as well. As we kind of get ready for the postseason here. What's kind of left to be accomplished for Oklahoma before they start their run in the postseason? Because, again, at the end of the day, if you're in the top 8, it's all kind of the same. Obviously, the higher the seed, the more favorable your path is theoretically, right? I mean, it's all, being put together by, the selection committee. But, we'll see what they can accomplish this week. But surely they want to go in and win this thing first year in the SEC tournament, I would imagine. So I guess just kind of look ahead to the postseason a little bit, what you're watching for this week, and then when the bracket comes out, later this weekend or early next week.
Yeah, you want to win the tournament, obviously. I mean, that's always the goal, is to win. Sure. Now, like you said, the super regional, I think is what is the main point of this. So I think OU just needs to win 1 game in this tournament, and it's without a doubt they're going to host. They're going to host both. The reason that's important for this group is because Patty Gasser's talked about it with this younger team. They haven't really performed their best on the road. I mean, they've lost 2 of their 3 series when it was a road series where the opposing crowd got to them. So if they can remain in state in the entire time of the postseason, because it's in Oklahoma City as well, I think that's going to give them a really, really big advantage. Now, the one series they lost with Carolina Pickens from Tennessee pitching against them, that's one of those teams that I don't know, in a 1-game situation like this tournament is, that could be pretty tricky. So I'm pretty worried about that. Maybe that's something that they have to pay attention to. But overall, if you win one of these games, I think they're going to be in regardless. They're going to host the regionals and the super regionals in Norman. They didn't be able to get to OKC and where anything can happen there. So just having the home field advantage, I think, is going to be a really big key, for them in the entire thing, pretty much.
And to clean that up, by the way, the selection show is Monday morning. I thought it was Monday, then I said it, and I was kind of like, it's Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, so 9 a.m. Monday morning is when the selection show is. So good for us because it'll be out before the pod, so we can talk about the path forward. But kind of crazy, right? At that time of year, it's a postseason SEC tournament this week, and then you get into the fun stuff with the NCAA tournament. But like you said, they've been a lot better at home, which makes sense, especially for a younger team, a lot of new players. You get regionals at home. You probably are going to get super regionals at home. And then, call it like it is. Oklahoma City, it's not a home game, but there's a lot of OU fans there in Oklahoma City. So that should work to their benefit, obviously. A lot of other fan bases have complained for years about OU softball getting to play every year in Oklahoma City. Those complaints are lame. We've talked about that before. But it is inarguable that it is an advantage for OU. They get to have so many fans there that make that short trip. So, this team could still certainly win a national title. It's not going to breeze through like it maybe has sometimes in the past, but this team's certainly still capable. And it's a big week there in Athens. Like I said, they'll play either LSU or Mississippi State on Thursday morning. James will have the coverage over Sooners Illustrated. Semifinals, if they get there, will be Friday at 3, and the championship, if they get that far, is Saturday at 4. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Like you said, presumably Tennessee in the semis if it goes chalk, and then probably either Texas or Texas A&M in the championship, which would be fun to play Texas again, or it could be a first crack at the Aggies if it gets to that point.
I'm really interested in it being maybe Texas A&M just to see a little different, different team, because I think OU seems to have they get the best of Texas at this point in time just because they're so familiar with them. We'll like to see them have to, challenge and see what Texas A&M is like. And Texas A&M is really, really good. So, just that'll be pretty fun to see overall. Now, in terms of the stadium situation, I feel like, as a fan, wouldn't you want it to be in the middle of the country where, everybody comes together to see it? And Oklahoma City has been the only city to even invest in the infrastructure to have the World Series at this point in time. So that's kind of the argument I always see, because I remember it was in Omaha at one point, like baseball was. I know it was in California once, but that's like all the teams have to go, all the way across the country. Some teams have to go, like Florida would have to go all the way across the country to get over there to California. So it's, it just seems like it's the best situation to be in the middle of the country, in that stadium where it's, pretty invested in, and a lot of fans can sit and have a great environment, which is what you want in a championship aspect.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me be clear. It is an advantage for Oklahoma, obviously. It's 30 minutes for Norman. It'd be silly to argue otherwise. But Oklahoma City, the city has invested. It's the Mecca. It's where the Hall of Fame is. It's the biggest softball stadium in the country by far. Yeah. I know that, the only real counter argument that people ever say is you could put it maybe in like a Major League Baseball stadium, and that's first off, good luck getting an MLB ballpark to sign off on that, to give up their park for like 2 weeks, or a week plus, and then have to put temporary fencing and bleachers in their outfield. You're not going to get an MLB team to really want to do that.
All the way through.
It's far and away the biggest softball stadium, and the people of Oklahoma, have invested in it, and it's where it's just. It's stupid. There's really no debate about where it should be. It should be in Oklahoma City. That it is an advantage for OU. That's just kind of the way it got tough. That's just the way it is. In baseball, it's in Omaha every year. It just so happens that the Nebraska teams are never there. So nobody ever complains about it because it's, it's staying in Oklahoma City, and it will be there for a very long time, and it should. It should be. Speaking of Omaha in baseball, big weekend for them. They played Ole Miss in a rematch of the 2022, College World Series finals, which was kind of cool, to see them. And when the schedule came out, that was something that people circled like, oh, hey, look at that. Ole Miss is coming to Norman. Obviously, those two teams played for the national title in 2022. Ole Miss winning that one. Spike was safe. # Spike was safe. And in game 2, it was fun to see them come to Norman. It was really cool to get those two teams together. Obviously, still Mike Bianco. None of the players are really the same. Ole Miss had a couple of guys still from that team, believe it or not. OU has nobody. Wow. So there's not really a lot of overlaps, just coaches mainly. But still fun to see them get together. It was a big series win for OU. They took 2. They couldn't complete the sweep on Sunday. That's been a little bit of an issue. Skip Johnson talked about that in postgame a little bit, kind of having those letdowns on Sundays. You got to find a way to kind of nip that in the bud. But still a big-time series win over a good team. Kyson Witherspoon, I'm just saying the same.
Same
every week, but he did it again. 7 innings, 1 hit, shutout on Friday night. He wasn't even sharp by his standards. He had a couple of walks. It was actually a season high in walks with 3. Very rare for him to kind of not have that pinpoint command, but it still didn't matter. I mean, he had 1 hit, no runs. He's unbelievable. Kate Carlson was good again on Saturday. They win the series.
You said a season high. His season high in walks is 3.
3, yeah. And he had a couple of hit by pitch too. But, so like I said, he wasn't even really sharp by his standards, and it's still – he's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. They win the series. Like I said, they don't complete the sweep on Sunday, but it's a big series win. Obviously, they're way in the tournament. That's not even a conversation. The conversation is, can they get to that host line? This was a big step toward it. I'm very interested to see the new projections this week. They usually come out on Wednesdays. Very interested to see where they kind of fall. I think they're right on that line. They got 2 weekends left. You got at Kentucky, and then Texas comes to Norman. Now, Texas was number 1, and then they went and got swept by Arkansas, so they're not going to be number 1 anymore. But that's still a huge opportunity at home to end the regular season with Texas coming in. I think if OU wins these last 2 series, they're going to get there. If they lose to Kentucky and beat Texas, they might still have a shot. But it's going to be close. But they're in position. They needed to win this series at home, and they did it. So they're in a good spot. It's kind of been a up and down team a little bit offensively. Sometimes the offense looks awesome. Other times it kind of goes through tough stretches. They really missed Dayton Taki, who hurt his ankle against Georgia. It's kind of he really was a big bat for them, and he played a really good first base. They're kind of missing him, but team's in a good spot. They're in a good spot. They're right on the line to potentially host. 2 weekends to go. And we'll see how they can finish up. But a big weekend to go get 2 from Ole Miss. And I think they have to be feeling pretty good about where they're kind of at in general right now as we get into the home stretch of their regular season for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty cool that Skip has got this team to where he's got them to. Because going into the season, you were looking at the schedule, and it was like, man, this is going to be really tough. And to even be in a situation to where you could be able, you'd be in a position to host, things really went well for OU. And I think that's along with maybe the little letdown that they had in the middle of the stretch of the season there, where they lost a couple of games, so they should have won. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, this team is really, really good. And so that's a really good spot for Skip to have this team. I think it's a pretty good sign for what's to come for OU in the SEC, especially as a baseball program. I think they're going to keep building on this, and so it's pretty good to be where they're at right now. What could happen from now on? That's pretty much what it's looking like.
No doubt.
Right
no, I'm glad you said that, because it is we take it for granted maybe a little, or maybe we don't give it enough attention just as a society, as the OU fans and stuff, that, the SEC is so good in baseball, and they really have handled it pretty well. I mean, they're above 500. They're in the top half of the conference right now. I think they're tied for 7th. Don't quote me on that in the standings. It's a crazy good conference. I mean, the top 10, you just look at any ranking, there's 7 SEC teams, 6 or 7 SEC teams in there. When the 16 hosts are announced, it's expected 9 or 10 of them are going to be SEC teams. I mean, it's unbelievable how good this conference is. And OU has held their own. I mean, all year. I mean, you had the LSU series where LSU kind of came in and really enforced their will. Other than that, I mean, they've obviously, won a lot of series. They've, been able to go and be competitive on the road. I mean, it's been a really strong year. You still got a couple weekends left. If they could host 2 straight years, hosting a regional would be really impressive. So we'll see what they can do the rest of the way. It's still out there to be had. Is a team that at their best can hang with just about anyone, but they got to find a little more consistently. But we'll see what they do this weekend. No more midweek games. We're past that. Only a couple weeks left, so they'll have the next several days off from game action, and then they go to Lexington this weekend at Kentucky. Starts on Friday night. Kentucky, good team. Not here recently they've been a top 10 program the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Not as good this year. They're still good. Don't get me wrong. They're still going to be a tournament team. So still a tough series on the road, but one that you should feel like, you can go get 2, which is the goal. Go get 2 and then, deal with Texas next week. But another tough test. They all are in the SEC, with the exception of Missouri. And, we'll see what they do this weekend. But a couple weekends left, and then it's postseason for those guys too. Fun time of year. Like I said, with softball and baseball in the postseason, it's this time of year is very, very fun and underrated. We have lots of coverage over at Sears Illustrated, Oakland.247sports.com. Tons of softball, tons of baseball there, and there will be over the next month and a half as we get into the fun stuff with these 2 diamond sports.
Yep.
I think that's it. We'll be back later this week with Colin. Like I said, we'll probably wrap up the portal a little further. Looks like they might be making one more addition at the buzzer. Also getting some other recruiting stuff with him. James, Tom, myself will be back next Monday to recap the weekends that were for the Diamond Sports. Obviously, the SEC tournament. And like I said, we'll have the selection show Monday morning. So we'll be able to look at the bracket, kind of look ahead to what OU softball will be dealing with, their path to the Women's College World Series. We'll also recap the weekend for baseball in Lexington, all that other good stuff, football, hoops, whatever there else is to get into. We'll do it on Monday with Tom, James, and myself every Monday, Thursday at 3 o'clock right here on the Sooners Illustrated YouTube channel and everywhere you get your podcast. Be sure to subscribe, Oklahoma.247sports.com. Become a VIP member. Keep up with all the great portal content, recruiting content, softball, baseball, basketball. It's all there for you. And come hang out with us and our great community, our great VIP members. It's a fun time, game threads, all this stuff to keep up and kind of hang out with everyone over at Sooners Illustrated. I think that's it. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. For Tom Green earlier, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. Signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.